And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, today we're taking a look at the Infinite board game. That's actually a very hefty claim, right? The Infinite board game introducing the amazing Piecepack system. The Piecepack system. Now what Piecepack is instead of a deck of cards, think about a deck of cards. A deck of cards of your normal suits of the clubs and the spades and the hearts and the diamonds, and you can play all sorts of games with that, right? How many games can you play with a 52 deck of cards? There's probably countless games. There are solitaire games. How many people play the game Solitaire or Spider on their computers? There are hearts and rook and poker, and those are just some of the more famous ones. There's tons of games. So someone years ago invented something called Piecepack, which was essentially trying to be the card game or the board game version of a deck of cards, where this would come with pieces, with dice and coins and tiles, and these would be a game where you could make up all sorts of games to play with it. Now there have been several different Piecepack versions that have come out over the years. This is probably the nicest looking one, and this one doesn't call itself Piecepack, it's called the Infinite board game, although it tells you it's using the Piecepack system. I do not think a Piecepack game has taken off like, say, poker has, okay? Or even a little bit. I don't very rarely meet someone who says, oh, one of my favorite games is such and such a game, and that's played with the Piecepack system. But I do know a lot of people like the idea of it. It is a toy in a sense of for designers to go in and design games. And so in this particular set, there are 50 of these games. Now, these are curated by W. Eric Martin, who is the news editor at BoardGameGeek.com. I've watched many of his reviews and overviews, and he certainly likes shorter, quirkier games. I mean, I'm sure he likes a lot of other games too, but those are certainly ones that seem to give him the most joy when he talks about games. And so I would imagine that there's several in here like that. There's solitaire games in here, classic games, and so on and so forth. So instead of reviewing all 50 of these games, which I am not going to do, I did not play all 50 of these games. I want to say I played 7 or 8 of them. And I read the rules for most of them because I find reading fascinating, and so there's a lot of things to read in here. I'm not here to review each of the games. I'm here to review the system as a whole. Let me introduce it to you. So this is what comes in the game. You have these tiles, you have these coins, you have these dice, and then you have pawns. Now there are 4 different suits. You have the moon, arms, crown, and sun. And these suits are on the coins. Each coin then has a value that is null value, or this big O. I'm kind of surprised they made the null value an O and not the actual null sign, but whatever. Then ace, 2, 3, 4, 5. And again, not sure why they have ace when they could have just put 1. Because some of the games actually have you add these numbers together, whatever. And again, an ace being a 1, that's just an extra step. But you'll notice that each of the dice here matches those colors and has those same symbols on it. Each of these pawns matches it. And then you have these larger tiles, which again match it. So this is the ace moon, this is the null sun, the null crown, the 3 crown, etc. On the back of each tile is simply a grid. Now what this lets you do with these grids is build a board. And maybe the board will look something like this. Maybe the board is 3-dimensional and looks something like that. You then can move pieces on the board. Maybe the board will have the coins on it. Maybe even dice will be on the board. There are different things that you can do with these pieces. The Piecepack revolves around this book here, the Infinite board game. Now this book here has a table of contents. It starts out by telling you about the different pieces, and then it starts with classic games. So for example, the very first game in here is checkers. That's right. You can take the coins, flip them over, take the board, put them together, and you can play checkers. And then there's other classic games in here. Not all these games are games that I knew were classic games, but you'll notice that these rules are really well done. I'm very happy with the way this rule book looks. There's very clear instructions. It's written really well. And there's colors on the side, so you can say, I'm going to skip the classic and go to solo games. So inside, there's solo games. Each game tells you the number of players, how long the game is, a quick description of that game, how to set it up, very easy. Once we get past solo games, and there is a good chunk of solo games in here, then we go to general games. These are going to be, I would call these board games. So here we have 4 blind mice. 4 blind mice, you're going to set it up and move pawns around. 4 blind mice is very similar to a game called Ricochet Robots. And then Cream of the Crop, and you have all, just to give you an idea of the different games. 4 blind mice, you're trying to get mice to where cheese are. Cream of the Crop here, you're trying to plant a certain arrangement of seeds before somebody else. Hanging Gardens here, you are building different gardens, Royal Engineering Gardens. This Sea Battle here, I haven't played this one, but you're going to have, it looks like you're trying to destroy your opponent's battle line with your own. Takeover is a stock market game in which the different shares are going to be different stocks. So once you get through this section, in the general game section, then, which is, again, this is probably the biggest chunk of the book, at the end we have dexterity games. That's right, you can have things where you're flicking things around. And these pieces actually work pretty well for flicking and moving around, and these make decent barriers. So like this one here, for example, Mine Ball and Tabletop Croquet. And then we get to the end, and that's the end. They just give some sort of credits here, and that's everything in the book. And there you have it. That's the Infinite board game, 50 different games, although these solitaire games are more like puzzles to me than they are a game. But your mileage may vary. Hey, I don't play many solitaire games, but I actually played some of these. Now, Piecepack for me has always been something that I was never that interested in. And there's a reason for that. It's the same reason that I didn't give a glowing review to the recent release 504. 504 by Friedman Fries was, hey, we're going to take this big box components and we're going to make 504 games that come from this. And you can use all the same pieces. And I've always had somewhat of a problem taking a game and using this and saying, hey, this is a soldier. Wait a minute. Now it's a mouse. Wait. Now it's a Roman centurion boat. Wait. Now it's a marker to keep track of stocks. Okay, that's very possible to do that, but the problem is I like when the components in the game reflect the theme of that game. They don't always. There are abstract games, but not every game in here is abstract. And some of these games are decent enough that they could be made into board games, or, like I mentioned, the one game here, which, by the way, the book gives credit to Alex Randolph, who created Ricochet Robots, very similar to that game. But when I played this, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Kind of like Ricochet Robots a little better because, 1, I was using robots to move around, and 2, Ricochet Robots has some depth that this game doesn't have. So what we have here is a book of pretty good games. Eric did a good job at selecting the different games that are in here. And by the way, this book is really well done. This book is worth the price of admission alone. Very well put together, well curated, and edited. I'm very impressed with that. The pieces themselves are good. They're certainly better than most Piecepack game pieces I've seen. I've seen some wooden sets that are nice. My only qualm on these is the dice themselves. The numbers aren't imprinted. The suits, which they stuck with, are fine, but the again, it's that null ace 2, 3, 4, 5 thing. Why not just have 1 through 6, or 0 through 5? But whatever. So anyhow, the pieces are fine. They're that nice backlight plastic. You know, they work well. Like I said, it actually works well for the dexterity games. I can't imagine playing that with some of the Piecepack versions I've seen that come with cardboard. You won't be able to play these dexterity games. Anywho, in this box, you have a bunch of decent games that use components that really don't match the games. Like, for example, I played one of the stock market games, and these never felt like it was a stock market game. I played one of the war games, and it's okay, right? I need that thematic connect to a game. However, I do think some people are going to enjoy it. Some people are like, ooh, 50 games in a box. Let me try it out and play them. And you'll find some in here that are good. I actually would recommend this maybe then over 504, because 504 was a bunch of medium, decent games in a box. There's some actually quite clever little games in here, but it just doesn't interest me that much. So while I would give this a pass, this isn't something that I would want on my shelves because I don't want the idea of these 50 games in a box. Like, oh, all right, which one do we want to play? I'd rather say, ooh, I like Zularedo. Let's play Zularedo. I'd rather have that kind of feeling. I do think some people will get a kick out of this because they will enjoy the fact that there's a pile of games in a box. They pull this off a shelf and say, ooh, which one are we going to do today? Especially since there's a good amount of solitaire games in here. How many of these games are solitaire? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 out of the 50 games are solitaire games. And that's, I mean, you want to play checkers, it's in here. You want to play Piecepack Hyena. So, not for me, but I give them credit. They weren't trying to pretend to be anything else. This is a game that's exactly what it's supposed to be. It's a deck of cards, it's a game. But you know what? I don't play with a deck of cards anymore either because I like my card games to be focused on the specific game. But if you are looking for that plethora and diversity and a lot of cool things in one box, this is probably the best Piecepack system I've seen yet. Certainly has the best guide to games for it. And if that interests you, you'll want to check it out. Dice Tower Judgment? Not for me, but some folks are going to love it.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Shut the door!
Yeah?